Hello everyone, my name is Shanae Jones and this is KNKY, which stands for Know the New Kinky You. And we are continuing our series to talk about sexual orientation, sexual identity, sexual fluidity, and how in the early days these things kind of got categorized and measured. So, we talked about some general things in the Instagram repost or Instagram live if you happen to watch it live. I did one video on the Klein Scale, so if you haven't watched that, please go back and watch it, because Klein was the father of the Klein Scale, the Klein Sexual Orientation Grid, which we're here to talk about tonight. So I want to remind you that Klein was the pioneer of research for one of the pioneers. I'm not going to give him sole credit, but he's one of the pioneers of research on human sexual behavior. But he was a scientist, and you know, science is all about being proven and disproven. So some of the issues that came about with Klein was that some people felt that his research was flawed, and not flawed on merit, but flawed on the fact that it was felt that it was detrimental to the different variations of sexual orientation and identity, especially as people started to self-identify in varying categories that weren't necessarily captured in Klein's study. So in my original talk, I talked about how as a young person coming up, you know, I was very familiar with LGBT, and I hesitate because the T was always something that I kind of struggled with as a younger person, who I've, as an adult, clarified what the T was. But sexual orientations of people continue to evolve, and I feel that although the main purpose is to be inclusive, is to build a community around diversity and to be acknowledging of the fact that not everyone is a straight heterosexual, I also feel like there is some exclusivity, because the letters LGBTQ plus is the one of the representations that I saw, isn't representative of all aspects of sexual orientation, which includes being straight. I'm sure we can talk about that more, but I want to just go back to the topic, and that Klein felt that there were people who, on a scale of 0 to 6, were in a range of being either 100% heterosexual or 100% homosexual. What he felt, though, was that there were more people who were somewhere in between. And I think that that could be true for a lot of us. Now, Klein, who we're talking about, he took this information and evolved it so that the research indicated that sexuality is not just based on who we are, but who we are at different points in time based on different aspects of sexuality. You always have to be distinct, and Klein decided to go from 1 to 7 versus 0 to 6, because Kinsey did 0 to 6. So when you're doing research and you're working especially off of the basis of other people's work, you have to try to find your way to be distinct, but the range is basically pretty much the same. Klein created the sexual orientation grid, and for the record, we're talking about Dr. Fritz Klein, who authored the book The Bisexual Option. Now, his grid again has 7 components ranging from A to G, and there are 3 columns that represent the past, the present, and the future. So again, all of this you can go on Google and you can look it up. I promise you, I'm telling you the truth. So the 7 characteristics that he was trying to measure, excuse me, are sexual attraction, which is whom you are sexually attracted to, who turns you on, who gets your dick hard, or who gets your pussy wet. Sexual behavior. This means who you're actually having sex with. There are, and I want to just specify that there's a distinction between sexual behavior and sexual attraction, because some of us are sexually attracted to people that we have not actually had sexual behavior or sexual intercourse with, sexual interactions with. So that's that distinction. We also have sexual fantasies, and this is, who we perhaps fantasize about as we masturbate, as we daydream. It's what's going on in our state of mind. Our emotional preferences, which, can also be different. Like, who do we want to connect with at an emotional level? Like, who do you want to fall in love with? Is it men? Is it women? Is it both? Who is it? We have our social preferences. This is more in the lines of our social network and our activities and who we hang around with. But I will say that I think there's a bit of an overlap with the next category, which is where you stand as a heterosexual and homosexual lifestyle. And this talks just about, again, the people that you hang around with. So, a lifestyle perhaps meaning who you are in a relationship with versus who is in your social network, perhaps. And then your self-identification. And this is, again, last but not least, but how do you see yourself, who you are as an internal person. So those are your 7 categories, A through G. Now the first 5 are answered in a different manner than the last 2. So the first 5 are whether, one being other sex only, meaning that you only would consider this with a person of the opposite sex. So let's start there with our ranking. A person with the opposite sex only. 2 was other sex mostly. 3, other sex somewhat more. 4 is both sexes equally. 5 is same sex somewhat more. 6 is same sex mostly, and then 7 is same sex only. So the last 2 questions, which were factors, not questions really, about your heterosexual, homosexual lifestyle and your sexual identification. Klein changed it up to whether you were heterosexual only, heterosexual mostly, heterosexual somewhat more, hetero, gay, lesbian equally, gay, lesbian somewhat more, gay, lesbian mostly, or gay, lesbian only. This is research though. So the Klein scale defines the past as life, adolescent life, up to 12 months ago. The present is your most recent 12 months, and the future is what you see your life could be like in the future. Now, the Kinsey scale and the Klein scale are intended to accomplish pretty much the same thing. They want to be pioneers of understanding and exploring the impacts of sexuality on us as individuals in a society, and hats off to them for making it possible. One of the issues though is that the definitive process of collecting data and analyzing it is something that most people are perhaps maybe a little bit more comfortable with than the personal constructs around dealing with individual issues, because we want to know how we both relate and compare to others. So I think that's why these studies kind of help the masses, but it doesn't exclude the fact that individuals require individual attention to address individual issues, and it's something to keep in mind. So here we are. Some of the problem that we have in trying to conduct these studies is, one, getting people to respond. I'm sure that you've been inundated at some point in your life with some there's a 2-minute survey or answer, or a full-blown survey, the census, where you just don't want to answer these questions. And you know, as much as you perhaps know that they are for the greater good, you don't want to answer the questions, and sometimes we just don't get the information that we need. But you know, these are important topics. So sexuality is not about age or where we are in life, in the past, present, or future. Or it's not just about, I should say. It's also about the influences that we've had in our lives and the messages that we've been privy to growing up. The problem, again, is it's hard for people to create a scenario in sexuality where they are encompassing of all the possible factors that could be impacting a person's sexual desires. Did we come from a household where sex was just another conversation? I have a girlfriend who, she tells me, you know, my parents, we talked about sex. I felt like I could ask her anything. There are others of us who, no, sex was not something that we talked about. And even some households where sex was a sin. If sex without marriage, it was a sin, or sex was a sin. We have to understand even the cultural impacts that influence our sexuality. You know, whether or not you come from a black community or white community, a Muslim community or Jewish community, Catholic community, ethnic and religious influences, they exist. We all have social influences that can come from a cosmic place, that, you know, it comes from how did I grow up and how did my family treat me, or how do they deal with sex, to, you know, what is my very, very personal experiences with sex. It all influences how it is that we understand and address it. So the next thing that we are going to talk about as part of this series is going to be the K and KY scale. Now, this is mine. It's not something that exists today, but it is something that I think that as a person who has gone to college and got a master's degree and understands research and has certifications and all kinds of things, especially a sex coaching certification, that I want to contribute to our knowledge about sex. And I'm going to be asking for your participation in that. So it'll be a short video, nothing that, you know, probably as long as these have been, but I want to make sure that you guys understand what is in the future. So again, everything across all social media is DOYUKNKY. My website is doyouknky.com. KNKY stands for Know the New Kinky You. I'm Shanae Jones, and I appreciate you so much for being here and watching this video. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do. I will see you all again very soon. Thank you.